what is important today is that we saw in the last 20 years a huge increase of power of e-commerce platforms who increased their power in the whole parcel postal market. So I think if you look to the definition of postal parcel markets today, the power of the e-commerce market should be taken into account somewhere in that definition. The second one is that you see more and more blurred lines between what is parcel delivery, what is mail delivery, what is delivery as a whole? Is it part of a logistic chain? Is it part of a postal parcel chain? I think the blurry lines between logistics, supply chain, network should also be taken into account. And another point that I think should be taken into account is what should be needed in a minimal delivery, what is a service obligation that should be taken into account. These e-commerce platforms should be also part of this kind of definition and minimal delivery systems, because there is a risk that the e-commerce players, the digital platform, they take the nice cherries on the pie, and that the local postal players might be left over with less interesting pieces and even not a pie anymore. So I think these things should be taken into account. That's my top three, let's say. If we look over the whole world, the incumbent postal players, they still have a huge network delivering to almost every space all over the world, from rural areas to city areas, from dense to undense areas, from problem areas to non-problem areas. And that's a huge advantage, that's a huge asset that postal players have nowadays. And even they had it in the past and they still have it nowadays. What even those big e-commerce players are not always to do so. They sometimes only take the nice part, while postal parcel players can still be the real last mile party in many countries. Absolutely. Nowadays you see, for example, that when you speak about regulation, a lot is about regulation. What's the minimal service offer? How many days a week or how many moments service obligation should be in laws, in regulation? I think that analyzing data, for example, using AI tools to analyze what do customers want, what do consumers want, what type of e-commerce needs to be delivered on a daily basis, which type of other types of parcels have another way of delivering. And I think data technology, analysis of consumer data can help a lot in this legislation. And that's the interesting part. Not one solution will fit all. And I think using all kind of new forecasting technologies, AI technologies, consumer data analytics can help a lot in finding the equilibrium, the balance between what's needed, what should be not needed, etc. Well, that's of course a very thin line and a very difficult line. We see it everywhere in many sectors, not only in the postal sector. What is difficult, and that refers also a bit about innovations in digital and in data. Nowadays, all over the world, you have a lot of legislation dealing with, for example, consumer privacy data. And on the other side, you see that sometimes using that data can make your logistics, your supply chain, your deliveries, your postal solutions sometimes more sustainable on the long term if you would use a bit more of that consumer data. But that's the difficulty today sometimes, how to balance that you don't capture too much consumer data, for example, while on the other hand, and if you regulate it a lot, you cannot use it, but if you leave it completely free, then there might be just too much consumption of consumer data. But data is, for example, using of consumer data is one of these examples where you can speak. Regulating nothing is not okay, but over-regulating might kill innovation, might kill forecasting. So it's always about finding a balance. The difficulty is always that in many cases you write laws or you write regulation when a situation is as is, but it's very hard to forecast it to be. But for postal parcel markets, we are all seeing we have certain forecasts. I would give the advice to not only look to the situation today, but how will the situation look within 5 to 10 years, and maybe already adapt the regulation in such a way that you prepare yourself for the next 10 years and not implement regulation which is already old-fashioned when you implement it. The interesting thing about the UPU is that it's one of these real institutes where all postal companies and related parcel companies gather here in Bern. And the interesting thing is everybody speaks with each other, and the interesting thing is that there is also already from decades cross-border flows. Letter mail, now moving to parcel mail, etc. In a certain way, that's a very positive point because it connects the whole world with each other. Secondly, you have a massive amount of data flows which you can use for making forecasts. And don't underestimate the power you have as the UPU in relation to linked with the United Nations, the good relations, for example, you have with local custom unions, because that's nowadays a very big issue in cross-border flows, that custom organizations need to intervene more, while the UPU can be the perfect, you can call it a bit the customs data hub that can connect everything with each other, making sure that parcels, if they cross a border, that they are not immediately stopped at the border because all data was already pre-processed before that. And nowadays, e-commerce companies have a big advantage because they orchestrate the whole flow, but UPU could be, let's say, the upper layer above national postal incumbent players to make sure that there is a data hub which is connecting all the dots to make sure that also traditional cross-border postal flows using postal parcel mails can easily cross borders without too much hiccups.